So here we are playing the French turn in the fourth round of the Second War in Struggle of Empires. The French chose to grab themselves a reserve counter, and they paid for that by triggering their tobacco counter. They have two tokens here. Give them $2. They're not at war with Austria. They're not going to get any better than they are. They could get worse. And then they spent their other action to move a navy and an army down to South America to help defend that. That one counter's worth 3 points to them. They want to hold on to it if they can. They might end up losing their dominance of the East Indies, but no big deal if they do. That's just points for the Prussians for the most part. Of course, they'll get some unrest if Prussia attacks them, but it seemed far and away the better choice for the French to do this. For the Prussian turn, they did defeat the French. They kind of blinked, though. They fired off one of their East India companies, pulled in $5 beforehand to help pay for that attack. I haven't paid the cash yet. So they got some money back. It was not that far apart as a fight in terms of total points. So one French army against 1-2 plus naval support sounds like a +2 advantage, except the French have army training and the Prussians do not, so it was only a +1. They still outrolled. The Prussians also picked up a government reform to reduce their unrest level. Onward. On the English turn, they also picked up a government reform to pay for an attack against the Dutch. Now, they've been attacking them each round. They finally succeeded this time. 3 armies in place against 1 Dutch army. That gives +2 plus 2 more for their the Swedes and the Danes. They still don't want to trigger the Baltic Company. They're going to take this too. They want cash here. They really do. And, well, they might be better off triggering it before they make their attack to have cash so that they don't go further into unrest. But at this point, they don't want to make that decision. They don't think anybody's going to be able to challenge them in the Baltic successfully. The Dutch took an unrest for their loss. The Dutch followed up with their own government reform chit. We're running real low on them. There's only 1 left. And they didn't make the attack on South America. They didn't charge their gold mines yet. But they did instead was built a navy with one of their pieces. They won an advantage over the French, at least to getting the naval advantage, because otherwise they could not attack navally and cede that advantage to the French, but then it would be an even fight down there, Portugal against the French. With the extra navy, they can use that navally and be a +2 there, and then be a +2 up here. Well, +1 because the gauchos, not pleasant. It's just not great odds here. And they don't have a re-roll option right now. So I don't even know if I'm going to take the attack. But it looks unlikely that anybody's going to take any Dutch territories, so those gold bites are probably safe. And will still produce the $4 that they're going to produce this turn. Safe to hold off, in my view. Now on to Russia with their huge buildup in the Med. The Russians also, they picked up the last of those government reform chits. Now there's no way to reduce your unrest in this game. So whatever you have, you're kind of, you're stuck on this growing spiral into revolution or whatever. So you got to be more careful, especially in the last war coming up. But even at this one, you got to start looking at your points carefully. Nobody's really high, but certainly there's the opportunity to skyrocket. They also fired off the Levant Company, which got them $3, an extra $1 plus an attack. In the attack, they won the naval battle, even though the Spanish threw the Ottomans in there. But they lost in the battle, in the land battle. Bad die roll or very good Spanish die roll. So both sides took an unrest marker from that, and the power hasn't really moved there yet. Yeah, Alright, on to Spain. I think I miscalculated there. That's not enough. Let's look at what the addition was here. So they were at +3 due to their counters, +4 to the naval victory, +5, +6. And I don't see anywhere near the right pluses for this. So actually, and I made this mistake last time, actually the Russians did not lose that battle. They won it. Which means Spain gets another unrest. And they're not doing too badly. They're up at 3 right now. But they've been booted out, which costs them 4 points, really. 4 victory points. Painful, painful hit. They've got to try to expand their own power, and they're not sure how to get additional points at this point. Spain's choices were kind of odd. First looked at trying to expand here, where I've got the Ottomans as a strength, but I don't feel like I can do that, so I'm going to trigger off the Levant Company and get $2 off that. Get that out of the way. The other thing they did was they bought an industry counter. Now that cost them 2 population and 2 unrest for 3 victory points. 2 will get discarded along with the reforms. Puts them in the lead up there in victory points. And then they built a fortification with another piece of population. This isn't an optimal situation for Spain, but they're playing to try to hold on and make themselves less attractive to attack by the Russian Navy. They really would like to be in a position where they could gain points on Britain, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And right now it looks like Britain's really kind of getting away with a lot here. We'll see what Austria does. Not good for Austria. They didn't pick up a card. They built an army using a population and attacked the Dutch here. Now they rolled very poorly on their first roll, fired their reserves off for a second roll, and rolled not well again against the Dutch. So they lost an army, got an unrest point for that, and didn't get, had they gained another space, they would have ended up bigger than Britain here, and instead of each getting 8 points, only they would get 8 points. This is their only way to hit Britain because they're allied with them, and the only people they could hit was the Spaniards and the Dutch. It seemed like the Dutch move was the more interesting of them for them to go into at this point. It didn't work out. Pity there. And now we go to the 5th round and everyone resets. So the French open up the final round of this war. They're not in a comfortable position here. I thought the Prussians were going to even things up here, but when you get the count correct, they've got the lead on the French there, and that, at least when the Prussians attacked, or when the French left it there, or whatever, I felt like there was more of a safety. But the French had an excess of population, so they industrialized, meant 2 more unrest, but some victory points, which put them a little further up, but their position on the board is just crap right now. And that puts us on to Prussia now. For Prussia's turn, they turned against the Indians, shipped 1 army, and only 1 army. They could have made 2 moves, but they didn't, over into India. Now, they could have built an army instead. It may have been a wise move. They're not picking on the French. They didn't see a point to doing so. Instead, they hit the Indian tile, took that out. They get $3 for succeeding, as well as putting one of these here. And once they did, they fired off their remaining East India Company tile, getting $7 more. They have a pile of cash now. And this was their strategy, really. It was take some unrest, but now gather up enough cash here and maybe in the next war to really, really be able to fund themselves without taking more unrest. We'll see how that works out. They've got some points coming. It looks like 9 points for their 2 areas. But that's not going to put them even in the race yet. Whatever Britain's gaining is going to be more than that. We see Britain sitting on 14, 19 points. Britain's a real danger, and people are going to have to start if they have, they haven't been really moving against them, and they're going to have to make a move at this point. Spain's been curtailed a bit, so I'm not expecting their points to grow the way England's are going to. All right, speaking of England, we're back on them. England's taking a more offensive action than I expected them to fire off. They marched into Central Europe with 2 units and attacked the Spaniards, drove their control marker out. There's still a Spanish army kicking around there. That can't be reinforced as easily, although they have adjacency, so they could considerably. One thing I forgot to do was fire off that Baltic token. I was considering the attack here, but that didn't seem as useful. So actually, kind of screwed up. I should have done that first, so that would save an unrest. I just rectified that. But yeah, England's looking at, hey, Spain's my competitor. Let's kick them down. Let's make it so nobody can catch us. Dangerous position. Everybody's going to gang up on England, but you can't really because of the alliance structure. On to the Dutch. The Dutch actually halted their attacks on the French, trying to drive them out of South America. Just isn't worth it. They grabbed the cash for their gold mines and then turned their efforts towards England. They picked up an industry marker at the cost of the unrest, etc., to move their victory points up, and tried to ship an army, just one, not worried about the navies yet, back into Germany to start challenging the English there, maybe in the next war if they get a chance. They didn't succeed. Their army disappeared. From what I understand, you don't get unrest due to a naval disaster like that. On to Russia. The Russian turn, they grabbed the slaves and picked up a quick buck off that. Then they shifted a navy and an army up into the Baltic. They feel like they've taken the Mediterranean. Now granted, Spain could still come back there because Spain has the Ottomans, which is a powerful force over there, but there's this general agreement, England's the danger. Let's take England out. Let's not worry about squabbling anymore. We have to concentrate on this one thing. On to Spain. And Spain is also concentrating on an anti-English posture. I may not be doing this as well as I can. They spent $4 for the improved agriculture, boosted their population a little bit, and then moved 2 armies into Central Europe where they have the advantage of the Cossacks. Basically, England's holding 2 things. They're holding Germany and Central Europe. And, well, 3, the Baltic as well. And nobody's going to be able to really hit them this turn. We're on Austria next, who can't even hit the English. The only thing they could do, the Austrians, is hit either one of the Dutch or the Spaniards, which would cost the English. It would also cost the Dutch or the Spaniards, though, if it's successful. And that's kind of where they're aiming. Even though Spain pulled their forces out, they're counting on their fortifications to hold this off. Well, Austria succeeded in their attack on Spain. They didn't pull a chit. They built an army. And what else did they do? Well, they did their attack, and they fired off their improved agriculture to get an extra token. They're going to have a pile of cash from this. They had to take some unrest, though, for what they did. And now they have 3. England only has 2. Well, that puts us to kind of the end of war phase, as it were. We'll slide up there. And at this point, we collect up, let's see, the income and maintenance, which, as usual, we're going to see you get money for each possession you have and each population you have left, but then you have to pay maintenance for your armies. We'll see what the cash is like for that and then count up the victory points. So the money was cashed in, and we see, and this time I'm going to boost everybody up after this. Everybody's at max population, basically. We see some countries with significant money afterwards, and others who barely are surviving. Nobody went negative about this turn, which is kind of cool. All right, let's look at the victory points, count them up, see what's going on. Over in North America, the French get 4, the Austrians get 2. Oh my. French are actually down a buck. I gave them a buck for that counter that had drifted into North America. Okay. So actually, the Austrians get 4 as well. That counter was their victory point marker instead. Over here in the Caribbean, Austrians get 5, and the Russians get 3. Seeing some serious Austrian points showing up here. Dutch get 5, and the French get 3. South America. Let's look over in Africa. Russia gets 3. In India, Prussia gets 5. Poor Prussia. Not doing well before this. And then here in the East Indies, Prussia gets 4. And France gets 2. So we can see, well, Prussia's got some more points, but the big Prussian push in a couple of colonial areas, while it brought them a lot of money, it's not bringing them the victory points they need. And they're going to need to use this money to try to score some points. Now let's go to Europe. Okay. First we'll do the Ottomans. And here, Spain gets 4, Russia gets 2. In the Mediterranean, Russia gets 6, Prussia gets 4. Central Europe, Britain gets 6. No one else is in there. Spain got kicked out. They have a lot of armies, but they don't have an actual presence. Likewise, here in the Baltic, Britain gets 5. And then finally in Germany, Austria gets 8. They took the big score here. Britain, with 2, gets 5. And then finally, 3 points for the Dutch. And we're seeing kind of that point spread. Spain's fallen way behind. Their losses were pretty severe. Austria's gain in Germany, though, is huge. And they've positioned themselves to get some extra points here in the Americas, which is helpful. Russia's probably trailing a little farther behind. It's going to be tough for them to catch up at all, even with a massive attack on Britain. Austria might have a shot, but will Russia? Hard to tell. And then the last 4 players, you got to kind of wonder, are they really committed to this anti-British alliance so much anymore? Or would they rather be lining their own pockets and seeing who's not going to be in last? I mean, maybe Spain can bring Russia down and finish in 3rd place instead of somewhere much lower down if they focused on attacks on Britain. On the other hand, they've positioned themselves to go for those British attacks. So it's going to be kind of tough. All right, well, now we're going to head into that 3rd war. And I'll just move these all to the side. And we'll pull out some new countries. And then do the bidding for the alliances. And we're kind of in the home stretch now. All right, up this one goes.